I'm Rabbi Brenner Glickman, and it is my great pleasure on behalf of Temple Emmanuel to say, Bruchim Habayim, welcome here into our temple and our sanctuary today, and on behalf of the members of Temple Emmanuel, to say a very special thank you to all of our friends from St. Leo University, from the Catholic Diocese, for choosing Temple Emmanuel as the venue for this program. You could have chosen any number of places in this beautiful city of Sarasota, and we are absolutely delighted that you chose here for tonight with these extraordinary speakers and a chance for us also to be part of something as magnificent as St. Leo and the good work that they do. Catholic-Jewish relations has been, for many in this room, one of the great surprises and delights of a lifetime. To see before us over these decades such warmth and friendship among peoples who for thousands of years have maybe lived side by side, but never with a sense of sisterhood and brotherhood as we now enjoy. I would like to share what happens here at Temple Emmanuel. We have a sister congregation in town, and it is St. Martha Church. And we do a number of programs each year, but there's nothing more important than our relationship, than what happens here every evening on McIntosh Road. Every afternoon at St. Martha's School, the parents at pickup cannot pull in because of traffic patterns. So they pull into Temple Emmanuel, go into our parking lot, turn around, and therefore are able to enter the pickup line. And every Friday night, our nice people have nowhere to park here. We've overgrown our parking lot, and they park in the St. Martha's parking lot. And this is the secret. This is how Catholics and Jews can get along going forward. It's mutual need for parking. But beyond this, what St. Leo has done through their Department of Catholic and Jewish Studies is brought scholarship and, more importantly, dialogue, not only to the August Halls of St. Leo, the oldest Catholic university in Florida. It's been here for 120 years. It is now the fourth largest Catholic university with extraordinary innovation in online learning, way ahead 15 years ago before everyone else was trying to catch up. St. Leo brings scholarship and dialogue far beyond their walls, from Naples through Tampa, and we are very grateful here in Sarasota as well. It is my pleasure now to introduce the man who brought us all together and organized this event. He is Matthew Tapey, who is not only the director of the Center of Catholic Jewish Studies at St. Leo, but also one of the favorite professors and teachers of the students. Matthew Tapey, from all of us, we thank you and welcome you now to the Bima.
Friends, good evening. My name is Matthew Tapey. As Brenner said, I'm the director of the Center for Catholic Jewish Studies and also an assistant professor of theology at St. Leo University. It's a great joy for me to be here tonight and to see all of you gathered together, to see all of us gathered to hear Rabbi Skorka and to hear him dialogue with Susanna Heschel. The Center for Catholic Jewish Studies has been around for nearly 2 decades. I will not go on and on about it because you have a nice color flyer there for you to take a look at it. And if you have any questions about it, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask. We'd love to keep up with you, so don't hesitate to let me know your email address and communicate with us via that information there. We have several friends tonight we need to thank, and they are Mort and Carol Siegler. In a conversation in the spring with Mort and Carol, they suggested then why don't you reach out to Brenner Glickman and Elaine Glickman and see about possibly having this event at Temple Emmanuel. And so we did that, and it's just been a complete joy to work with the Glickmans and with Judy Dean, and I'm thrilled to see this all come together tonight and to be here. Before introducing Rabbi Skorka, and before introducing Dr. Susanna Heschel, I would like to share a little something from the book that Jorge Bergoglio, now Pope Francis, and Rabbi Skorka wrote together, a New York Times bestseller called On Heaven and Earth. And it's a part of the book that touched me. And I shared this already yesterday with Rabbi Skorka, whom we squeezed at St. Leo. Rabbi Skorka told me, "You are squeezing me." Because the schedule was so nonstop. And I told him, well, it's a squeeze. Think of it as a hug. Because we love you so much. This is Rabbi Skorka writing. While studying the books of the Talmud, I found one that says that friendship means sharing meals and spending time together. But in the end, it points out that the sign of a real friendship is the ability to reveal what is in one's heart to the other person. That is what happened over time with the two of us, Skorka is saying to Bergoglio. I believe that undoubtedly the most important thing that brought us together was and still is God, who caused our paths to cross and allowed us to open our hearts to each other. I think that God has brought us together in the same way that Pope Francis and Rabbi Abraham Skorka have been brought together through their conversations about God. I'm happy to be a part of this, but I know there's much larger things at work, and so it's moving to be here on a number of deep levels for me. Let's cut to the chase then. Rabbi Abraham Skorka is a chemist, a rabbi, and writer. In 1973, he graduated from the Latin American Rabbinical Seminary with an ordination as a rabbi. And in 1979, he was awarded his doctorate in chemistry at the University of Buenos Aires. He is now the rector of the Latin American Rabbinical Seminary, which trains conservative rabbis, cantors, and educators in the Latin American Jewish community. In addition, he is the rabbi of B'nai Tikva in Buenos Aires. Pope Francis and Rabbi Skorka co-authored a book on interfaith dialogue titled On Heaven and Earth that was published in Spanish in 2010 and in English in 2013. It is based on over 30 TV shows they co-hosted in Argentina. Rabbi Skorka was also honored by writing the introduction to Pope Francis's official biography. And in 2012, Pope Francis, who was then Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio, granted an honorary doctorate to Rabbi Skorka on behalf of the Catholic University of Argentina. Tonight we are also very fortunate to have another special guest with us, Dr. Susanna Heschel, the Eli Black Professor of Jewish Studies at Dartmouth College. Susanna's scholarship focuses on Jewish-Christian relations in Germany during the 19th and 20th centuries, the history of biblical scholarship, and the history of anti-Semitism. Her numerous publications include Abraham Geiger and the Jewish Jesus, which won a National Jewish Book Award, and The Aryan Jesus, Christian Theologians and the Bible in Nazi Germany. She has also taught at Southern Methodist University and Case Western Reserve University. My friends, would you please join me in giving a warm round of applause to our special guests. First, Rabbi Abraham Skorka.
Good evening to all of you. First and foremost, my gratitude to the organizer, to St. Leo University, to Emmanuel congregation, and to all of those who organize this event, this special moment, I hope, for all of us. My gratitude to Professor Susanna Heschel for being here, honoring me. And the second point is that I ask apologies for my English. If I commit certain errors, excuse me. If my accent sounds a little bit Yiddish, you know, my good friends used to tell me, you have the special ability to speak Yiddish in several languages. One of them is English. So, the theme is to speak about Rabbi Professor Abraham Yoshua Heschel. How he had an influence on my life. Never I met him personally, but through his books, articles, and through the deeds of his very close disciples, Rabbi Marshall Meyer, all of them of blessed memory, they impacted me really a lot. Who was Marshall? So everyone knew him with this word, Rabbi Marshall Theodore Meyer. He came in, the story begins in this way. The greatest and oldest conservative or liberal congregation in Argentina is located on the street Libertad and is known as the Temple of the Street Libertad, Córdoba Libertad. And it's a big temple, very traditional from an architectural point of view, and the rich Jews, the aristocracy of the Jews, used to assist to this temple. At the end of the decade of the 50s, members of the board of this temple went to the Jewish Theological Seminary, spoke with Professor Finkelstein and with Professor Heschel, requiring for them a young rabbi for the youngsters. So Professor Heschel recommended Rabbi Marshall Meyer. Rabbi Marshall Meyer really, his first intention was to stay 2 years, no more, in Argentina, but really he was an American. He was born here in Baltimore, no? In Connecticut. And his first plan was, okay, I come here, I work with the youngsters, I build up a movement in this congregation of youngsters, and afterwards I came back to America. America is my place. The end of the story is that he spent 25 years, something like that, in Argentina. And he impacted in such a way the Argentinian Jewry by the building of a master congregation named Bethel. In its time, Bethel was a master congregation. What I mean by master congregation, that other conservative congregations looking on Bethel, they took a model congregation. They learned how to renew themselves. He introduced in Argentina Jewry, which was the characteristic of Argentina Jewry was that the main spiritual movement of the Jewry was the Zionist movement. Not the temples, not the congregations, but all the Zionist organizations, and among them an impressive network of Jewish Zionist schools with a very high level of education. The schools used to have two blocks. One block was from 8:30 to 11:30 from Monday to Friday. And after I studied in this block, in the morning block, and afterwards I assisted to the public school, studying Spanish, math, and all the common subjects. But the Jewish subjects I studied in this school. Imagine yourself, I entered this school with 7 years, and my teacher knew nothing in Spanish. She was an Israeli girl, and she connected with us in Hebrew. Just this was the education of that time, but at the end, we finished speaking a fluent and good Hebrew. We knew a Bible, we knew Talmud, not in an Orthodox way. I would say in a Ben Gurion way. What means that? To study Torah without the kippah, to perform some Kabbalat Shabbat with the kippah, saying Kiddush, but everything in a different way, not in the very traditional way. When Marshall came, he introduced the idea of the importance, again, of the importance of the congregation, of the community, of congregation. And he had a special fire in his spirit. And he used to quote all the time phrases or thoughts from the one that he considered his master in capital letters, Rabbi Abraham Yoshua Heschel. I remember how I entered really the seminary. I hadn't an experience of conservative communities because, as I told you, I studied in Zionist schools, and beside that, my Beit Knesset, my shul, my synagogue was an Orthodox synagogue. The second synagogue, when we moved from one neighborhood to the other, the second synagogue was a Hasidic synagogue. No, don't imagine people with peot, with the traditional garments. No, simple people who came from Poland and religious, with a very open mind. This was in the 60s, and from them I learned the spirit of Hasidism, beside what my father taught me. And at the end, when I was in the last year of a third level school, and when I was by finishing my studies in order to get the licenciatura, as we call that in Argentina, it's a master, more or less, is a master in chemistry, is a rabbi who worked together with Rabbi Meyer, told me, why you don't come to our seminar? Come, finish the studies, and be a conservative rabbi. We have a lot of conservatives, synagogues, asking from us, please send to us a rabbi. Why? Because they had the model of Bethel, the success of Bethel, and it was a great necessity of having conservative rabbis, of a great necessity to produce conservative rabbis. So I went, this was in 71, the beginnings of 72, to the seminary. Then I knew Marshall. I remember someday that I opened his office, how he sat on the side of on the front of his desk, looking on a letter with his hands not touching the letter, but putting the letter behind the desk. And he looked on me and said, I received a letter from Heschel, with reverence, as reading a chapter of the Torah, something very special. But I tried to go to the well, to the root, to the master. For our great sorrow, in December 72, your father passed away suddenly in the night of Shabbos, of Shabbat. And my first meeting with a book of Heschel was in the third level high school. The book, of course, that we read the book in Hebrew, in its original. It's a wonderful book, named in Hebrew, Torah min hashamayim v'aspaklaria shel hadorot. The heavenly Torah, I gave my own translation, v'aspaklaria shel, in the view of the generations. This must be, I don't know if, because I know that this book was translated, but I'm not so sure that they translated on this way. And it resulted in what frame I studied this book. Then, after the first, second years of the Midrashah, where you had the possibility to choose two specializations. I chose Talmud, Bible studies, sacred studies, and as a second specialization, philosophy. And the professor presented for us not all the chapters, but the first chapters of this book. And really this book resulted for me something which, it's something fascinating. Why? Because this rabbi, first of all the name, when I saw Avraham Yoshua Heschel, I said, what a strange name. Avraham Yoshua Heschel was the Abter Rebbe at the beginnings of the 19th century. And afterwards I realized that the exact name had several rabbis in different generations. And this is in the last generation, Rabbi Avraham Yoshua Heschel. But the point that caught me was that he wrote a book trying to go to the deep sense of two sages of the Talmud, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael. It was not merely an academic book in which he paid this special attention to each minor detail. What I understood is this person tries to go to the quinta essence of the way of thinking of Rabbi Akiva. The plan of this rabbi was really a tremendous, ambitious plan, but a very necessary plan. Because we studied Talmud and studied more and more and more, but what was the faith of the great Rabbi Akiva is the greatest sage of the Talmud. Between all the sages, his opinion is the most important opinion that the other sages took into consideration. So, to try to enter into the deep way of his thinking, of his faith, it resulted me something really impressive. I felt that he is going beyond the mere academy. He is entering into the deep questions that the simple great professors don't dare to touch. After years, I realized that the professor in the Hebrew University wrote a book about the sages of Talmud. And in the preface of the book, he says, okay, I am not going to take into consideration the book written of Rabbi Abraham Yeshua, by Rabbi Abraham Yeshua Heschel. Why should he to say that? Dafka means in Hebrew, just because that, he is saying, I am taking into consideration this book. The second book that impressed me a lot was the Shabbat, translated into Spanish then by the Rabbinical Seminary. Heschel had the tremendous capability to produce extraordinary phrases that shook my mind, my soul. For instance, when he said, it's very simple, but it's so deep, when he said, for me, it was a whole lesson, when he said in this book, other people, other cultures sanctify places. We sanctify time. Time. The meaning of time. And the other thing is this, I learned a lot, because science was the other passion in my life. And when he, in some way, relates relativity, Einstein's theory of relativity, because he quotes Einstein's theory of relativity, and the Shabbat, this was a whole teaching for me, that science has to speak with religion. Science is science and religion is religion, but some dialogue which starts in a position of humility from both sides, from the scientist and from the theologist, must occur. Afterwards, okay, God in search of man, man in search of God, and certain phrases, so which I felt that he describes realities. I knew the thing, but the way he said this, because you have a lot of things in your mind, and he was the master for me that took all those things from the mind, from the subconscious to the conscious. For instance, the Bible is not a theology, a book of theology written by a human being, but an anthropology written by God. It's a tremendous phrase. It's tremendous. It shocked me when I saw for the first time this phrase. Afterwards, but I'm not going to speak about God in search of man, man in search of God, and other articles. Don't forget something very important. When Marshall began having his success, was in a turning point in the history of the Zionist movement in the world. Remember what occurred in spring '68, what we know with the name the movement of Paris in spring '68. It was a whole cultural revolution in the world, and it's a subject to be analyzed. Why the Zionist idea, it was after the Six-Day War, of course, why the Zionist idea was not so attractive for youngsters and for Jewish people. And then was the flourishing of the conservative communities, congregations in Buenos Aires and Argentina, and it began to be also in all Latin America. Why? because suddenly from one day to the other, the youngsters didn't assist more to the kenim. Ken is a nest in Hebrew, and it means the place where the youngsters used to come together to gather in order to perform their Zionist activities, to play, to do this, that, and all kinds of activities, and by the way, to learn about Israel, to brush up their Hebrew. Suddenly, from one day to the other, this disappeared and was the flourishing. And Marshall was the right person on the right place on the right moment. But why I am telling you this story? Because in Argentina, in Marshall's time, was the drama of the military governments, the drama of missing people, the drama of a lot of youngsters who, in place to go to the new communities, went to the terroristic groups and were part of them, and they were killed, and the bodies of them, who knows where they are. And then Marshall was a champion in the fight to install human rights, the idea, the importance of human rights in Argentina. And he was the only one known Argentine citizen who received the highest condecoration given by the Democratic President, of course, Raúl Alfonsín. Why I am telling you all these stories? Because undoubtedly that the teachings of Abraham Yoshua Heschel were the house light for his deeds, for all what he did. Undoubtedly, he was, let's say, a product of, so I understand that, of Heschel. But Heschel touched my heart in a very special way with his posthumous published work in Yiddish. Yiddish is my first language, Kotz. I saw his first published book of poetry that was published in Warsaw, 1932, maybe something like that. Very deep, very interesting, too much sophisticated for me. The Yiddish is not my Yiddish, the Yiddish is the Lithuanian Yiddish. The first book. Why? Because he did that in Vilna. In Vilna they spoke what they considered the proper, pure Yiddish. My Yiddish is the simple Yiddish spoken in the streets of, now in Polish they say Łódź, but for me it's Lodz, the place where my mother was born, my grandmother was born, or in the streets of Krzyska, or in the streets of Kotz. Now, his posthumous book in Kotz, and the subtitle is A Gerangi Verängstigkeit. At certain opportunity, I mentioned this book to someone who has a good Yiddish. He corrected me. No, must be Emmiskite. Emmiskite means true. Must be Emmiskite. So I said, I'm not so sure. Afterwards, I go to the book, and Emmiskite, as I heard in my house, because the Yiddish he used in this book is my Yiddish, I felt when I taste this book, the stories that my father told to me, and the introduction that he wrote for the English version of this book, A Passion for Integrity. I saw some kind of correlations between, in some way, his experience in the middle of a Hasidic house, but from the other side, some influence of the Enlightenment, the cultural Enlightenment, that pushed him forward to go to Vilna and to be part of the Vilna group of new Yiddish writers, and how he describes his being splitted between the Baal Shem Tov, with the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement, yeah, with a naive character, with a pure faith, and with a storming master, as was the Kotzker Rebbe. In some ways, some kind of very strange parallel influence, in a total different characters, of course, total different personalities. I had in my when I was a little child, and only after many years I realized that. I knew in her last years of life my grandmother from my father's side. She was very ill, she suffered from Parkinson, and I remember when I was really a very, very little child, maybe 5, 6 years, how in Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, we lived together, yeah? How I entered into her house. She was very kosher, and with a great open mind, how she sat alongside the table with an open machzor, praying. On the other side, they had a grandmother, that from my mother's side, that she used to prepare the house for Shabbos. She suffered a lot in her life, but never I see her. She prepared the house of Shabbos, she cleaned everything, she prepared everything. But never I saw her lighting the candles of Shabbos. She wasn't cross with God. And I received very religious, but in cross, in fight with God, in some way. And when I learned about the Kotzker, who had such a tremendous influence on Abraham Yeshua Heschel, I remind all those characters that I saw in my life who really were deeply religious, but they had to discuss with God as the Kotzker had in his time. And this is briefly what I can tell you about Abraham Yeshua Heschel. I can speak much more, but we must be brief. But I would like to tell you a story about Abraham Yeshua Heschel. In the year 2002, for July, I was invited by the then Chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, Professor Ismar Schorsch, to teach a summer course in Talmud. Okay, my place, I went with my wife to New York, and they had a room, the chancellor's room in the Jewish Theological Seminary. And as I arrived in New York, some people from Argentina gave me letters to send in the post office to the White House, protesting for something, for the policy of the United States. This, that's, I don't know exactly what, but I asked where is a post office, and they told me where the post office is, and I queued with my wife, and just in front of us stood a woman, an old woman, and in order to do something positive in the time in which we are queuing, I began a conversation with this woman, asking her where is a good cafeteria to have a good coffee, where we can buy fruits. So she told me, okay, make a turn around and in Brooklyn, in this place you will have in Broadway, excuse me, in Broadway, this place you will have a good show, okay? We dispatched the letters, and we enter into the cafeteria, because for us, 5 in the afternoon is coffee time. As in England, tea time is coffee time. Suddenly I saw this woman sitting and eating noodles at this time. For us it was a little bit strange, but this is the American way. So, in order to be polite, we shared the table with her, and we spoke. So she asked where from we are coming. We said we are just arrived from Buenos Aires. I was invited to Jewish Local Seminar, and so on, so on. So she said, did you know Marshall Mayer? So I answered, of course. I know him very, very well. I knew him very, very well, because he was not more alive then. And afterwards she told me, did you hear about Rabbi Heschel? Yes, of course. She told me I was Marshall Mayer, a classmate in the School of Music, what is just in front of the Jewish Theological Seminary. Good. Do you know Professor Heschel? Yes, of course, Heschel, of course. Very well, very well. Do you like to have a chat, to speak with Sylvia Heschel? You know the story? You know the story? I said, of course, because I felt that it would be a good opportunity. I knew, she told me that she is not totally in a good health, but I felt that is a good opportunity to tell her about the importance of her husband in Argentina, the impact, and to tell her, I remember when you were in Argentina and when you presented the Spanish edition of the Prophets, edited by Editorial Paidós, because really I was there. So she gave us, this woman gave us the phone. She lived in the same building. One floor, she was a neighbor of your mother, and your mother lived in, I don't know, 6th floor, 8th floor. Good. First week there, of course, this was a conversation between women. My wife called this woman and asked her, can we visit Heschel, Sylvia Heschel? So she said, no, she is not good on these days. And from one week to the other, so in the last week, I told my wife, you know what, let us be polite. Really, I suppose that okay, this mitzvah, this commandment, we are not going to fulfill. But just in order to be polite, ask her. So, and on that opportunity, she said yes. On Wednesday, 3 p.m., you have to stand in the front of the building, and I will pick you up, and I will go with you to see Sylvia Heschel. So it was, and we arrived, and I saw where your father, the workroom of your father, and some kind of, when I entered the feeling, oh, this is the place, this is a sanctuary. And in some way, she told me, I remember that I stood on stairs. I told her yes, because the room was very small, and you said she remembered something from Buenos Aires, and everything went in a very simple and very nice way, and in a logical way. Suddenly, she said to us, please, let us have coffee. Let us have coffee. It was very strange for me. Why coffee? Why should she to prepare? She bought a chocolate cake. Why should she to prepare all that? And suddenly, to tell you the truth, I felt something very strange. All the atmosphere began to be strange. So I told her, you know what, how strange is that? Your husband was Abraham, like me, and you are Sylvia, like my wife. And we began speaking, and she told me about the professors, about Lieberman, and what happened there. But I asked her, without expecting nothing, I asked her, maybe that you have a piece of paper with some note of your father, something. So I'm going to put this in a frame in the seminary, because the rabbinical school is named Abraham Yeshua Heschel. So here's something very strange. She took me to the archive, your father's archive. She put the archive, it was with two locks. And she said, okay, take what you wish. I opened the archive, I see letters from this cardinal, from the other cardinal, really. I close, open, close, I don't dare to take anything. Why? Because it's simple, something no relevant, no important. Suddenly, in the last drawer, were the drafts of codes. We took two papers, one sheet, and some letter written from him to someone named Chaim in Yiddish. And the end of the story is she knew exactly what the meaning of her action. She went with me to there was a Xerox shop in crossing the street, and she made a Xerox of, she paid the 10 cents. When I felt that there is some message on this, some message. I put this on the framework, put in the seminary, but I felt something very strange. The answer I received was when I read in the book of Kaplan that Paul VI said to your father, I hope to see you in Jerusalem. and I read that just before I went with Francis to Jerusalem, this was the answer. The answer to that moment. The day when I met Sylvia Heschel was on the eve of Tisha B'Av, the day when we remember the destruction of the first, the second temple of Jerusalem, and so many, many bad things. If I did what I did with Pope Francis, is because I had an Heschel. Heschel means permission from Rabbi Heschel. I consider him my master. His article, "No Religion is an Island," is a masterpiece. I gave the books of Heschel in Spanish to Pope Francis. Pope Francis knows a lot about Heschel and other persons because he gave a lesson for centuries and maybe forever. And I would like to share with you what means really interfaith dialogue. When the dialogue becomes a friendship, and when the dialogue becomes a brotherhood in some way. Yesterday, Rabbi Klein said in his speech in the university why the Vatican don't react against the declarations of the UNESCO. And when I answered him, I told him about the considerations of the Pope regarding the position of the Pope regarding the State of Israel, traducing an email that I got from Pope Francis on May of 2015. But I also told him, I wrote to my good friend, to the Pope Francis, if it's not the time to say something about those declarations. But yesterday I said it's impossible for me to receive an answer from him because he went to Sweden. So it was a good excuse why I didn't have yet an answer. But just before coming here, I checked my emails and I received his answer. And I'm going to translate to you. My dear brother, thank you for your email. Through our ambassador, I suppose, the ambassador in Israel, we are doing gestiones, we are doing we are doing deeds in order to regarding this issue. I believe I believe that this is the best that we can do from here, that it's possible to do from here. Also, were said some declarations on that way. You know, a couple days ago appeared in the press some declarations from him, and he continues telling me, los aires de guerra, the climate, the weather of war is more universalized, and really it's a matter that worries me. Hace un par de años, a couple years ago, I began saying that we were on the Third World War in portions, in chapters. It's not a war which is like the Second World War, a totally war that you can see one scene after the other. No, it's in chapters. Now the chapters are going, and to be more and more global. Will God curb this craziness? I remain on your disposition. Best regards to Sylvia, to the kids, yeah, my kids, they're more than 30, both of them. Please don't forget, he finished all his emails with the same words. Please don't forget to pray for me, and because I am praying for you. And I am praying for, not because, I am praying for you. Will God bless you, brotherly Francisco. Unbelievable would be this for your father. But your father has a lot to do with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you tonight. I want to thank, first of all, our friend Dr. Matthew Tapey for bringing us together and for inviting Rabbi Skorka to speak in such a moving way. It's wonderful to meet you, to know you. I thank Rabbi Glickman and Rabbi Shafran for hosting us this evening. And of course, it's wonderful to be with you, Bishop Dwayne, and all the great work that you do here. And it's great to meet you, the president of St. Leo University, General Lennox. And I think it's also very important for everybody in this room to realize what it means when a president of the university comes to attend this event. That shows us how earnestly this university takes this program. And so too should we. We should all support this program. This is a Center for Catholic-Jewish Relations and Studies with wonderful faculty, including my good friend Rabbi Rudin, who's here this evening. There you are. Yes. This is a great program, a program not only for this region, but I think with outreach for the entire world. So I hope that we should all here take pride in St. Leo University and support these efforts. I thank you, Rabbi Skorka, for what you said about my father this evening. Can everybody hear me? Yes. It's because I come from New York. Rabbi Skorka's description of his experience with Rabbi Marshall Meyer, who I knew him because he was my babysitter when he was a rabbinical student. I also know him because he was a graduate of Dartmouth College, where I am a professor of Jewish studies. In those days, we didn't have Jewish studies. But he was an extraordinary human being, Marshall Meyer. When he was a student at Dartmouth College, there were very few Jewish students, let alone Jewish faculty, and yet there was a professor, Fred Berthold, of religion, who took Marshall under his wing and realized that although Marshall Meyer wanted to study theater and opera and had a wonderful voice, there was something in Marshall Meyer that said, I really want to be a rabbi. Dartmouth College is the first college in the United States that invited my father to speak. It was before I was born, and my father went there and met Marshall Meyer and struck up a friendship. Marshall Meyer did, in fact, apply to rabbinical school, but he had no background. His Hebrew was weak, he didn't know Talmud, the professors didn't want to accept him. And my father said, I'll tutor him. That was extraordinary, because my father saw that there was something in this person, in his heart, in his soul. And my father spent the time to take care and bring that out. He went to Argentina, and yes, as Rabbi Skorka said, he was a brave man during those terrible fascist years when people were disappearing, taken off to jail, no one knew where they were. And Marshall Meyer went as a rabbi to the prisons and demanded to see and gave the names of the people that he wanted to see, and by naming them and locating them in prisons, he saved their lives. They couldn't be killed off. He saved many human beings. Now, Rabbi Skorka points out that Marshall Meyer was a disciple of my father's. My father taught something very different, a different kind of Judaism, and a different kind of Catholic-Jewish relations. And I'll just briefly say a word about that. For some Jews, Judaism, being Jewish, it's about nationality. It's about politics. Some Jews say, no, it's about ethics. For my father, it was everything, but most of all, it was about an ethos. And I think those of you who are Catholic may understand that. An ethos, it's a way of being that fills your whole life. It's how you are with other human beings, your family. It's not just 1 hour a week in church or 3.5 hours a week because synagogue services last so long. I don't know why. Gives me Catholic envy. What is it to imbue oneself with a Jewish ethos, with a Jewish spirit? I'll just say one thing. For my father, most of all, it was about prayer. About prayer, because also prayer is what links us as Jews and Catholics. I'll tell you, I woke up every morning when I was growing up, and there was my father wrapped in his prayer shawl, saying his morning prayers quietly. And sometimes I would go and stand under his prayer shawl, his talit, and hold him. Sometimes I would just curl up on the chair quietly to be in the same room with him. You know what it is when someone is praying with real devotion. You sense it. The whole room is filled with prayer. I woke up to that every day. My father said that when he was growing up in a very religious family in Warsaw, Poland, he said he grew up surrounded by people of religious nobility. And I think that's a wonderful phrase, religious nobility. I want my children to have that. And I think all of us do. To expose our children to religious nobility. How do we give that to our children? That's a question we have to face and talk about as Jews and Catholics. I know that Catholics want this too. You want your children to be in the presence of religious people, people who devote themselves to a religious life, a life of prayer. What is it to pray? For my father, prayer wasn't only the words, it was the Spirit. And the Spirit imbues the words, but not only words, because my father came from a religious Jewish tradition, pietist movement called Hasidism, which says that you pray also in the way you do things, even simple, mundane things. Eating, walking, listening to another person. I can tell you that the way my father listened to me was a prayer and a gift. He listened with his whole heart. I could feel my words go into his heart. He listened with empathy, with compassion, and I know not just to me. And that was a prayer. It's a prayer to be with certain people, to create a certain atmosphere. To pray means also to give to another person. To give with a heart, with your soul. Now my father also felt that it's not enough to pray words. What does it mean to pray, he said? Prayer, he said, is something that should be a challenge to us. He said, we don't pray in order to be saved. We pray in order to be worthy of being saved. We shouldn't walk out of the synagogue, he said, and pat ourselves on the back. Oh, what a good person. I survived that 3.5-hour service. You should walk out of the synagogue or out of church and feel a little unpleasant, feel stirred up a little, feel that you actually have been challenged, that you need to live your life differently. He used to say a religious person can never say, I am a good person, because there's always something more to strive for. There's always something more. My father said that the opposite of good is not evil. the opposite of good is indifference. And he felt to pray and to be indifferent to the suffering of this world would be blasphemy, he said. That's blasphemy. So we can't simply feel we have fulfilled our duties as Jews or as Catholics. We went to the synagogue or to church and that's it. On the contrary. And so my father was very involved in the movement against the war in Vietnam because he felt that war had become attacks on civilians, atrocities, napalm, burning children. My father went to a demonstration against the war in Vietnam, and a journalist came over to him and said, "What are you doing here?" It was unfriendly. My father said, "I'm here because I can't pray." And the journalist said, "What do you mean you can't pray, so you go to a demonstration about the war?" And my father said, "Whenever I open my prayer book, I see before me children burning from napalm. How can I pray?" We bring our whole lives when we pray. My father said that prayer is a home for the soul. But of course, first we have to find our soul. Where is our soul? And how do we bring our soul to pray in that moment? My father also said, after the war, after the Shoah, after the Holocaust, after 6 million people, and I have to tell you, my father's mother, my grandmother, I bear her name, his 3 sisters, his whole family was wiped out. And he said, where were we, human beings? What kind of people are we? He said, maybe we need to say Kaddish for our souls, because they went up in smoke with our indifference. Let me just say that I think we have to think in historical terms. I am a historian, and I think thinking historically also makes us appreciate more deeply what we're doing today and this evening. For so many centuries, did a pope have a Jewish friend? Did Jewish and Catholic theologians sit together, work together, exchange ideas? If it happened, it was very rare. Something new has been given to us in our generation, and it's extraordinary. We've gone from being enemies to being brothers, as the title of John Connolly's book declares about the Second Vatican Council and Nostra Aetate. Something extraordinary has happened for us. The question, my father says, is how we, as Jews and Catholics, not only talk to one another, but how can we help one another? Rabbi Skorka mentioned my father's article, which has the title, "No Religion is an Island." What does that mean? Whatever happens in one community ultimately affects another. We have to be responsible for one another. But most important, how can we help one another? I can tell you there are times when I sit in the synagogue and it's hard. It's hard to pray. There are times when I struggle. When I struggle because friends have died and friends are ill, and I worry, and I'm upset, and I'm in despair. What do? We have to turn to one another in those moments. Turn to one another for strength, for insight, for help, and indeed, as Pope Francis wrote, to pray for one another. Because ultimately, we are human beings, we're religious people with deep commitments, and really a desire to live amongst people of religious nobility. And now, for the first time in history, we have that opportunity to come together as Jews and Catholics in this great way, to study with one another, to read Psalms with one another, to pray for one another, to uplift one another, and to bring joy to one another. I just want to conclude by saying, I have had great inspiration from my father's friends who were Catholics, from the priests and the nuns who used to come to our home for Shabbat dinner, who inspired me with their devotion to God and to prayer, with being in their presence, which is something I carry with me always. And finally, I have to tell you the truth. I love my husband, I love my children, and I really love Pope Francis. What a great human being, and aren't we all grateful for this amazing gift of such a wonderful human being as the Pope? Isn't he a great person? Thank you very much.
Abraham, Susanna, thank you very much for your wonderful words. We want to move now to our next segment of our program, where I would like to introduce you briefly to President William J. Lennox, Jr. Dr. Lennox did his PhD at Princeton University in poetry. He is a general, and before coming to St. Leo University, he was the president of West Point. I want you to please join me in welcoming President Lennox up to the beach.
Thanks, Matt. I know you can hear me because I too am from New York. But I feel like I've been blessed over the last 2 days, Rabbi and Dr. Heschel. What a great experience. And a special thank you for hosting us here. As was mentioned earlier, St. Leo University has really concentrated on the Catholic-Jewish relationship. I think it's from our Benedictine history, the different values that we have of community, respect, integrity. I think that's so very important in everything that we do. Over the last 2 decades, our Center for Catholic Jewish Studies has been very much involved in starting and continuing that dialogue that we've been talking about. And to continue that, or really to emphasize it, one of the things that we do is give an award, the Eternal Flame, to outstanding Catholic or Jewish scholars and religious leaders that have a significant impact on that dialogue. And tonight I'd like to invite Rabbi Skorka up here, please. We'd like to recognize the tremendous work that he's done in Jewish studies, but in continuing that dialogue and really building the mutual respect between the Catholics and the Jews. So, Rabbi, congratulations.
We also wanted to just read to you at the very bottom there, it says, to Abraham Skorka, for your lifelong commitment to Jewish learning, interreligious dialogue, and promoting mutual understanding and respect between Catholics and Jews throughout the world.
Thank you so much. Really, there are some sages who explain that what is really a blessing, bracha in Hebrew. A blessing is when you work and you get the fruit of your work. And really we worked together with the then Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, currently Pope Francis. And we stood shoulder by shoulder in difficult times for him. And we fought, he together with me, in order to, when I sent articles to an important newspaper about religion, about the importance of values, not religion as merely a tradition, but religion articles in the sense of Heschel is, as Rabbi Heschel defined that, is how we work together in order to speak with one, with another, and to see how this article appears in the newspapers, not for my curriculum, but in other opportunities, not for his curriculum, but in order to transmit a message to Argentinian society. The television programs, how we fought, because it was a fight to call, to attract the attention of the media in order to let know the Argentinian society what dialogue means about. Because the idea was not just to show a priest and a rabbi speaking, but to show the importance of dialogue in itself as a barrier against violence and so on. So thank you so much to San Leo University for your recognition, for your award, and of course that this is a symbol to continue ahead, to continue fighting. The things are not so easy. After our hack in Jerusalem came the war between, you remember the hack in Jerusalem in front of the Wailing Wall with our good Muslim friend, came the war, for our great sorrow, the war between Israel and Gaza, and many people said and expressed that the Pope got nothing, not with the Hague and not with its wars, and the Pope got nothing through his trip in the Middle East, in the Holy Land. And in one of the mails he responded to me, he said, "Will come a day," so on a prophetic words, in which all the smoke of the battle will go, and the importance of our words on our deeds will have, with God's blessing, an answer. Okay, with this signs you're giving us an answer, and you are giving us a message to continue. And as I used to say the Pope in our meetings, in our farewells, I tell him in Spanish, of course, no me afloje, be strong, would be the translation. Okay, this is the idea. And so this will remind me your presence, your deeds, your actions, and that we are not alone. Thank you so much.
As we close, I would like to ask a very good friend of the Center for Catholic Jewish Studies, the co-founder of the center and current advisory board. We're blessed to have an advisory board member here tonight, Rabbi James Rubin.
hope all of you put in your memory bank the night of Wednesday, November 2nd, 2016. Or if you do it with the Hebrew calendar, the first day of Heschel, 5777. This was a unique moment. I hope you will never forget it. An amazing combination of people and of a moment to always remember. Now, you've been very patient as an audience, so I'm now going to ask you to participate with me in the closing prayer, because I'm going to ask 6 very special people tonight to come up on the bima, up before you, and I'm going to invoke God's blessing upon them. But it won't just be myself. I want you all to be involved. So I want to teach those of you who don't know Hebrew 3 little words to say at the appropriate time. The words are Cain, a little louder, Yehi, Ratzon, which means, of course, may this be God's will. And I'm going to invoke God's blessing on 6 very special people with one of the most famous and beautiful prayers in all the world, of course, from the Torah. So I want to invite yet again to the bima Rabbi Abraham Skorka, Dr. Susanna Heschel, our hosts here in this area, the Bishop of the Diocese of Venice, Bishop Frank Duane, and our host in this Temple Manual, Rabbi Brenner Glickman. He's in the back, of course. Moving forward. And then representing St. Leo University, Dr. Matthew Tapey, who is the director of the Center for Catholic Jewish Studies. He's here. And of course, a 3-star general who is a poet and is the president of St. Leo University, William Lennox Jr. And I'm going to say it in Hebrew and then in English. And at the end of the English, I want you to say, Cain Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. This is the blessing for the 6 people behind me, and the blessing for all of us. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless all of you, and especially the 6 people behind me. May God protect you, and together, Cain Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May God's presence always shine upon all of you and be gracious to you. Cain Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And may God's presence be upon you, and may God grant all of you shalom, the great gift, the gift of peace. Cain Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will, and together may we say, Amen.
My friends, thank you for coming out. We are very thankful for your presence, and it's been a wonderful time to share with you. Have a wonderful evening.